Over the past 6 months, I've spent a lot of time researching the best ways to locate areas with a lot of bass that you can target with forward-facing sonar. Through a combination of studying live tournament coverage and on-the-water experience, I feel like I've developed a really strong strategy that works almost every time I go to the lake to locate productive zones that are holding a lot of bass. And on these trips, I'm catching 30, 40, 50 fish a day using this strategy, and I want to share it in this video. Let's get into it. First and foremost, after all of my research, I've come to a pretty strong conclusion, at least for me personally, that targeting fish with forward-facing sonar is very different than using traditional fishing techniques. And actually going forward, I'm going to be going back to using more traditional fishing techniques and not using forward-facing sonar on this channel because I just enjoy it a lot more personally. However, if you do have forward-facing sonar and want to use it, the method I'm about to explain is very effective. It's just a little bit different from how I have taught finding fish in the past. And even though it's different, it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. I just had to kind of rewire my brain when I head to the lake when I have forward-facing sonar to maximize my success. And I'll get into that now. The focal point of my strategy for targeting bass with forward-facing sonar is finding the bass migration routes. These are creek channels, drains, or ditches. This could be the main river channel, creek channels that actually form the creeks on a highland or lowland reservoir, or drains and ditches that wind into bays or offshore flats. I would consider all of these migration routes, and the key to locating lots of bass with forward-facing sonar is figuring out where in these migration routes the bass are setting up on your given lake based on the lake conditions. Now, the biggest difference between traditional fishing and fishing with forward-facing sonar, in my opinion, is the ability to target fish in and around these channels. A lot of anglers are having success at the professional level targeting bass that are suspended in the middle of these creek channels and drains. These are the easiest fish to spot with forward-facing sonar, and on a lot of lakes you can catch a pile of bass that are suspended 5 to 15 feet under the surface over 30 to 80 feet of water. However, these aren't the only bass that are catchable with forward-facing sonar. You can also catch a lot of fish that are sitting very tight to the bottom in these drains and creek channels. Some of these bass are sitting as deep as 40 to 50 feet of water, and a lot of anglers overlook these fish because they're only focused on those fish that are suspended high up in the water column. But again, I've had just as much success targeting fish that are on the bottom as I do fish that are suspended up in the middle of the water column. But before you jump to the conclusion that you only need to target the center of creek channels with forward-facing sonar, I want to put a huge caveat out there. There are days when I do not find fish suspended in the middle of creek channels or on the bottom. Instead, they're setting up on structure that's adjacent or basically touching these creek channels, drains, and ditches. A lot of these areas are going to be points, humps, or ledges. There are certain conditions that will pull the fish out of these creek channels and actually have them set up on hard structure. These are the fish that I am traditionally targeting with my side scan, down scan, and 2D sonar, and they will be set up on a specific area for an extended period of time where you actually could catch them with traditional methods. The conditions that get these fish to set up on structure vary lake to lake, but a lot of times it depends on the amount of man-made current or wind current you have, as well as if you have striper in your lake. If you have a lot of striper in your lake, the bass don't like to roam out in the middle because they can actually get eaten by the striper. So instead, they like to set up close to the bottom on hard structure away from these creek channels. But they're not necessarily going to be far away from the creek channel itself. They're just going to be setting up on a piece of structure close by. Now, a lot of times if you have striper in an area, the bass are really tricky to catch. And the same thing happens if you have a lot of shad in your area. If there's too much shad in a specific area, the bass will get so keyed in on those shad that it makes it hard to target the bass in that area with artificial lures. In addition, you can get into certain areas with so many rough fish or non-bass species that it's really hard to differentiate the bass from those other species of fish. So not only do you have to find these bass highways, the drains, creek channels, and ditches, you also have to find some of these areas that don't have too much bait, don't have striper around in the area, or too many other rough fish. In addition, you may not find fish suspended or on the bottom in the creek channel at all, and you may have to target the hard pieces of structure like points and humps in adjacent areas. All of this makes finding an area that is good for using forward-facing sonar for bass a little bit tricky. And honestly, I would say finding a productive area is the hardest part of using forward-facing sonar. After you get into an area with a lot of bass, usually anyone can pretty much catch a few bass. There's ways to catch more bass in an area using specific techniques and retrieves and stuff like that. But if you are in a productive area to start, you're at least going to have some success with forward-facing sonar. And so I wanted to try to develop a systematic strategy for locating these key zones as quickly as possible when you get to the lake, so you don't waste a ton of time using forward-facing sonar in unproductive areas like I mentioned earlier. And to complement this strategy, I actually collaborated with Jimmy Easterling from the Fishing Coach YouTube channel to develop live sonar breakdowns. Jimmy is a full-time guide specializing in forward-facing sonar, and he is the best angler I know at quickly breaking down lakes to find these productive zones. So using my research and Jimmy's daily experience taking clients out on the lake with forward-facing sonar, we developed these live sonar breakdowns to give you a step-by-step process for eliminating unproductive water quickly and locating these highly productive areas where you can use forward-facing sonar to catch a lot of bass. In these breakdowns, we provide 20 zones that are highly likely to hold bass. In each zone, we give two different waypoints, an A waypoint and a B waypoint. The A waypoint marks all of the bass migration routes, the drains, ditches, and creek channels I mentioned earlier. We mark the center of these migration routes, so you will have to look on either side of the waypoint following the drain, ditch, or creek channel about 100 yards on each side. A lot of times the bass are going to position in different parts of these creeks and drains based on the time of the year, the water temperature, the water clarity, the wind, and a lot of other factors. But most of the time, the A waypoint is going to be relatively close to where you should be finding bass in the middle of these drains, creek channels, and ditches. Again, with maybe a 50 to 100 yard margin for error up or down that creek channel depending on the lake conditions. In addition to the A waypoint, we also provide a B waypoint, which is a piece of structure that's highly likely to hold bass if you don't find them suspended or on the bottom in the middle of the creek channels or drains, the A areas. We only mark the most likely piece of structure in that area, but there may be other pieces of structure that are similar, so we would definitely recommend checking out the other pieces of structure that match what we mark in the breakdown, because sometimes we don't know exactly which point is going to be the best, again, based on the lake conditions. To demonstrate how you can actually do this on the lake, I took the Beaver Lake breakdown and went out to the lake right after a major snowstorm.
Okay, so now that we have the waypoints downloaded on the fish finder, we're out here on the lake. Let me show you kind of how I break down an area that has the waypoints in them. As you can see, we have two waypoints here, A and B. A is going to be the creek channel, and B is going to be some type of structure that the fish might be relating to. I like to start at least 100 yards on one side of these waypoints and graph my way up to the waypoints, because there's a lot of times when you'll find the bait are actually on either side of these waypoints 100 or even 200 yards, because the bait fish move. There's no way for us to know exactly where they're going to be based on the water runoff, the temperature, all those different things. So what I'll do then is pull up my mapping. I'm going to pull up my down scan and my side scan view. Now I'm just going to start zigzagging through the middle of the creek, and you want to basically follow the creek channel, whether you can see the creek channel line on your map like I can here, or if you can just follow the deepest part of the lake. And so we're going to make our way basically in a zigzag pattern looking for shad. Shad are critical when you're trying to catch these live sonar fish, especially in the winter time. And all the breakdowns we do are going to be on highland and lowland reservoirs that have shad, because that's kind of how this process works. And the idea is that if you can find shad in the area, there's likely going to be a population of fish. Now, those aren't always going to be bass, and this is actually the 16th waypoint that I've graphed today, and I've repeated this a couple different times this segment, because I have gone through areas and either seen a bunch of bait and no bass, or I've seen a bunch of non-bass species, whether those are drum, catfish, and striper. So you have to kind of thread the needle perfectly where you have bait fish in the area and not too many non-bass species in the area at the same time. And you're not always going to know exactly what species of fish are in an area. There's actually a bunch of striper right there on that tree on the right side of the screen. But you're not always going to know if there are a bunch of bass or other species in the area until you drop the live sonar. But step number one is just finding the bait. So we're going to zigzag across this creek and wait until we see that right there, shad on the screen. And that is a lot of shad. That is awesome. Now, what I'm hoping we don't see are a bunch of striper in those shad. There's some striper on that tree over there, which is a little bit concerning, but not the end of the world. We have a bunch of bait right here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually start marking this bait. And what I wanna do is mark out and grid out an area where the shad are present, basically. I don't want to get caught up, and actually there's some fish right here. We can see them on the side scan. This is really good stuff right here. So you can see 3 fish. Don't know if those are bass or what those are, but you can see 3 fish right here on that side scan view. If we zoom it in, you can see those 3 dots, 1, 2, 3. That's exactly what we're looking for. I haven't really seen much of that today. Let me back out of here. There's a lot of bait in this area too. That's really good. There's a few more fish. Now, when you have striper in a lake like we do on beaver, a lot of times the bass aren't actually gonna be setting up out here in the middle chasing the shad because the striper kind of drive them off. So I'm not actually expecting to find a bunch of bass chasing on shad. Instead, I'm expecting to find them more towards the bottom of the lake or potentially up against some of these pieces of standing timber, boat docks, stuff like that. So we saw that bait, it was over here, which is a good sign, and we're gonna keep rolling through here and see if we see more bait. So the idea that I have with finding bait fish basically is the bait are gonna be in a pretty defined zone, whether that is on one half of the creek, they're going to be, let's say, in 100, 200 yard stretch, or they're gonna be right like on a break or something like that. So there's another ball of shad, we're gonna mark that. And what we're basically doing here, oh, that's not what we wanted. I'm gonna remark that with a, there we go, with a shad icon. We have some shad right there. And as you can see, they're close to where we have our waypoints that we provide in the breakdown, but they're not exactly, well, there are some exactly on the waypoint too. That's a good sign. It means we did a good job there. So those shad are right there, and there may be some fish actually sitting on the bottom right on that break right there where those shad are, so I'll just keep marking these icons with shad. And it seems like the shad are on that little break. They're not necessarily on the, they're not out here in the channel. They're kind of up on that flat, and as we can kind of see, I marked this as an offshore flat, and that offshore flat is a lot of times where the bass and fish are going to be on timber and different things. And so it looks like those shad are kind of on the edge of that flat, on the edge of that channel right there. They're not necessarily out here in the middle of the channel. Now I want to kind of confirm that really quick by graphing to the other side of our waypoints as well, because sometimes the fish are going to be, again, on one half of the creek or one side of the waypoints, and the other time they're going to be on the other side of the waypoints. So I want to make sure I graph this other side really quick. Usually this takes me a maximum of like 5 to 10 minutes per area to kind of graph through and just see if we can see baits. We see a little bit more bait here, not as much as we were seeing earlier, but there is some, which is still a decent sign. So I'm going to mark that. I'm going to wait actually to mark that because that's just a tiny ball of shad. There was so much shad back over there that I almost feel like it's not worth marking that little tiny ball of shad. There's more shad right here though. Look at this. Boom. Bunch of shad. Looks like there may even be a fish down there on the bottom. Yeah, there's a fish on the bottom right here. I'm going to mark this with a fish icon and shad. So there's a bunch of shad in this area. So the idea that I have when I get out here, once we actually drop the trolling motor, is there may be shad kind of through this entire area. I don't want to get too far away from the waypoint that I mark, because we mark these waypoints for a reason. It's where these fish are going to set up in certain times of the year, and they're going to winter. And so I don't like to get too far away from the areas that I mark, but I do want to check to see where the shad might be. And there's a little bit of shad right there, which is good, but I think that may be getting close to the end of it because I'm not seeing a ton more. There's a little bit more, but we kind of have now a zone that we can target, which is really, really good. I'm gonna work my way a little bit more because, again, don't want to stop and fish all the way over there when there's even better stuff over here, but I think we're kind of defined in that zone. So not seeing really any more shad this way. I'm gonna spin us around. We're in the kind of into that channel because that last little bit of shad was in this channel as well. So we want to see that. And now we can kind of see that we're running out of shad. There's not really any shad left. We just have a bunch of timber and a bunch of nothing. So that lets me know that we basically can spin back around and focus on this zone here. So where I'm gonna fish is basically from where I dropped that bait icon to this other bait icon. And we're gonna get up here and we're gonna follow the 10-minute rule, which means I'm going to fish here for 10 minutes with my live sonar on. And if I don't catch a fish in 10 minutes, we're gone. And I've done that 15 times today because I have fished for 10 minutes, not caught a fish. But hopefully, spot number 16 is the lucky one, or I'm gonna be re-recording this and you'll never see this and it'll never see the light of day. So either way, hopefully it's lucky spot number 16. Let's see if it works. Here we go, come on, get it, get it, get it. There we go, oh, finally found the fish, guys. Only took me freaking 4.5 hours. Good ones here too. This is what I've been looking for all day, guys. Found a spot that has a wad of shad and actually has some bass on it. Finally, guys. Sometimes this forward-facing deal can be a grind. You have to run so much water. I've been running creeks that I've caught fish on for years, and I've caught them in a bunch of these creeks and I just didn't find any fish. It's super typical with this deal, but when you do find them, it can go down quickly. And I finally found a spot here. You can see there's shad all over the surface. They're spread out all over here, and this is one of the spots that we have marked on the breakdown. And right on this drop there were a couple of fish setting up on the bottom, basically on the lip of this creek channel here. They were showing themselves, and I think there's going to be more in this area with as much bait is going on here. And I'm not seeing a bunch of striper and other species of fish like we saw on all the other spots. I am going to just try to make a few casts down on this little channel ledge right somewhere in here and see if we can find a few more fish. But I have seen a few more swimming around even just in the first 2 minutes I've been here, and it's a very good sign. So let's see if we can get a couple more in the boat. Come on, fish. Running his head. Come get it. Come on. Come on. Come get it. Just eat it. Eat it, eat it, eat it. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Got him. There we go. Nice one. Finally, a largemouth right here through these bait. Got in this area, guys. Finally found the area. There's bait here. There's not the white bass and the striper and the other species. There's not that many fish, but a lot of times it doesn't matter if there's not too many fish. A lot of times it just matters that you have enough and there's not too many other fish in the area that are messing with them. And that is a solid 3-pound largemouth. Out here on Beaver, these are absolute gold. I mean, guys, that is awesome. If you can get 5 of these in the boat, you are top 10ing every tournament on Beaver year round, and that's exactly what we're looking for. There's about 5 or 6 more of them down there as well, just like that. Got that fish on the core tackle strut head. It's a new prototype mid-strolling head with a Yamamoto scope shad, 3.5-inch, beautiful fish. Oh, beautiful fish right there, guys. Look at him back down in the lake. Whew, that's what I'm talking about. There are more fish in this area too. They're kind of spread out. I lost one earlier too that was probably the exact same size as that. Hit it, didn't fully get it. The conditions are not ideal today. No wind, bluebird skies. Look, there's even more of them right in front of the boat here. They're chasing like crazy. Let's see if we can get our bait over to one of them. Whole wad of largemouth right here. Come on. Come on. Come get my bait, come on. One of them's, looks like they're trying to track it, but they're not seeing it. Oh, come on. Come on, you see it. Come get it, come get it. Come on, come on. Oh no, missed him, dang it. Look at all these fish, guys. There's a bunch of them over here. They're all largemouth. There's a freaking stack of them over here. They just pulled up on this wall, and there's a little bit of bait, or a lot of bait, and they're just chasing. These are all largemouth. Come on. Can't believe he missed that. One of you come back and try to eat it. Come on. Wow, I missed that one. That was a bummer because that was another really good one. He just nipped it. I thought I had him, but they're just chasing down these trees. There's a bunch of fish down these trees. Look at them all up there. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Got him. Here we go. Saw him up there. Nice fish. Good one. This is a smallie. There's some smallies down this wall. Actually made a bait change. Get on up here. It's a better one than I thought. This is a nice keeper right there. It's a really solid fish. It did not seem that big when I was fishing for him. That is a nice one, solid 2-pounder. Got him on a 3/16-ounce strut head. I downsized from the 1/4 ounce because those fish were following it and missing it. And I also switched to a little bit bigger profile bait. This is the Bass Tricks Hover Tricks. It's a core tackle Bass Tricks collaboration, and it pairs perfect with that strut head. And that is a beautiful smallie right there. Let's get that guy back down the lake. Here we go. There's 2, actually 3 really nice fish in this area. We finally found the area. It's wild, guys. This is spot 16 in the breakdown rotation. So we're literally going through almost all the areas to get to this one, but that's what happens sometimes. Again, the areas that I marked in this breakdown, I've actually caught fish doing this in all those areas. I fish beaver so much that I've caught fish in all the areas I've marked. It's just some days they just are not setting up in there because of the presence of bait fish, because of the water clarity in a specific area, whether the striper move into the area or walleye or white bass or other stuff. And it's just kind of crazy how some days you can roll into an area and catch them like this, and then a week later or a month later or whatever, you can't get a bite to save your life. But right now, this area is popping off. I've caught them back in here pretty well in the past, but it's been like 4 years. I checked this like every single year almost, and I haven't caught them back in here in a long time. So it just kind of goes to show that you have to keep these areas honest, roll through the rotation, trust the process, and eventually you're gonna get to the fish. It's just always a chore trying to find them with this technique when you don't have a lot of practice time. You're trying to just do a day of. Well, there we go, guys. Got the trifecta actually today. A largemouth, smallmouth, and spotted bass all out of this area. Caught them in a kind of different way than you might expect fishing the minnow. Some of them were up closer to the bank. One of them was out there on the bottom pretty deep. I missed a few others that kind of just nipped at the bait, and I just kind of expected that with the bluebird sky no wind day. But still, it took us a while to find these fish, but when you do run the program that we provide in that live sonar lake breakdown, you're going to find these areas. You just have to put the time and the effort in. Today I went through 16 different spots until I landed on one that had fish. And again, a lot of the spots I checked today, I've crushed them on in the past. So it's just very seasonal dependent, depends on the rain, how the runoff is, the water clarity, water temps, all kinds of things. So you just have to stick with the program, follow what's in that guide. And if you do want to check them out, pick up some of those live sonar breakdowns over on fishthemoment.com. Caught those fish again today on the core tackle prototype strut head. We're coming out with it very soon. It's our mid-strolling head. I got that last fish on another prototype, which is the Bass Tricks Hover Tricks, which we collaborated on with Bass Tricks at Core Tackle, and that's going to be launching at the same time as the strut head. Awesome little bait. And then I also caught another fish on the 1/4 ounce strut with the 3.5-inch Yamamoto scope shad. And then the other fish I had was on a little shad-shaped worm, 3.75-inch shad-shaped worm from Yamamoto on a 1/2 ounce tungsten ball head. So those are my 3 baits, kind of mixing up with different depths and different retrieves, but we were able to finally put some fish in the boat. So thanks for checking out this video, guys. We'll see you on the next one.